Hey everyone, this is Chris, and this is your daily uncut news. So, I'm sure you guys probably know we've been talking about for a while now. The dollar remains strong, and it is essentially the world safety currency. When in doubt, just hold dollars. Because if you're going to hold cash, at least hold something that you know is not going to lose value. And I was thinking about like earlier this year when we saw the Russian rupee basically collapse. It scared a lot of people, right? And if you're going to be safe and you want to hide money on the mattress, you might as well do it in dollar. And the other thing too that you guys may or may not know, 40% of the world's transactions are done in dollars. So dollar is always good. And when you price food for say imports, so like for example, if you're in Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, Europe, anywhere, when you're importing food from other places or you're importing energy, oftentimes you pay in dollars. So that's why so many transactions are done in dollar. Again, 40% of the world's transactions are done in dollars. So dollar is good. One of the things is too is that the other currencies just keep crashing. You guys can see this here. The British pound seems to be the one that most people are concerned with. So as I mentioned before, if you were short the pound at the beginning of the year, that was the best trade probably this year. So please give a shout out if you had foreseen that. I just didn't. I wasn't on my mind of like, oh my God, I got to short the pound. But some people probably did if you looked at the Brexit stuff and like, you know what, I just don't have any faith in the UK economy. In terms of the US markets, equities are down. Basically, people are worried about with growth scare, possible global recession coming up. The next earnings reports this next quarter, if companies come out and say, you know what, we're not making any money, that'll probably push the market down further. We don't know. One thing I will say, though, is that, well, for example, if a possible positive catalyst, I don't foresee it happening, but you never know, would be Apple comes out and says, you know what, man, those new iPhone 14s, everyone's just buying them up. They can't get enough of them, and they just want to keep buy. But I don't think Apple's going to say that, but you never know. I can't read the future 100. The argument for that would be, we're all locked up at home and we want to get outside and buy Apple iPhones. I don't think it's a good argument, but that would be argument for. The argument against would be just that supply chains are concerned. And even if people wanted to buy these things, one, they don't have enough money, and two, they can't build them fast enough. So it's hard for me to imagine a world to where Apple comes out and reports good earnings. But like I said, you never know. That's why we have earnings reports to see how things are going. But as of now, though, there's more sort of sentiment that things are going to be bearish than not. And one of the things that with UK we talked about this before, they give out like the biggest tax cut in 50 years, and their currency falls like the lowest in 37 years. It's like crazy apocalyptic kind of stuff for the UK over there. And love to hear if anyone in the community that watches these videos that's in the UK, just let us know what are people saying around there. What's sentiment like? And one of the things about the dollar, and I think I mentioned you guys several times, the world's transactions are done in dollar. 40% of world's transactions are done in dollars. So, you always know dollar's safe. Pound used to be safe, but people just aren't have any faith in it right now. Also, too, the Chinese yuan is also sinking as well. Japan's currency is sinking. So you have China's currency sinking, Japan's currency sinking, Korea's sinking as well. I'm in Korea right now, so we took a pretty good bet that things would improve for the dollar. And basically what I'm telling you guys, if you want to live abroad, if you want to travel, it's a good time to go because the dollar is really strong. Other thing is too as well is that we're reaching sort of trend lines of where the market has been going in terms of long term. You can see that we're talking about the 200-week moving average. Will it drop below that or not? And we'll find out. The one thing is when we're talking about will it test the June lows? Some people were saying, that's the bottom. That's definitely the bottom. I didn't think so. I never said that. I understood that the market was rallying, but I just didn't feel like that was the bottom. That was just my opinion, and it looks like I was probably right. One of the things that I will say, though, is that you always ask yourself the question, when you're looking at, say, the June bottom from before in terms of the market, is the world better today or worse today? I think you can make the case that inflation maybe is starting to come down, but not like crashing, right? Inflation is not going to just suddenly disappear. However, you have more concerns about world currencies, more concerns about the war in Europe, and salaries are going to maintain elevated. I'm not saying that's the toughest thing about with inflation is that once you start paying people more money, it's hard to take that back. And so, people are worried. And in terms of markets, you can see this here. Just a lot of people are sitting on cash, like $5 trillion just waiting on the sidelines. So that's the one thing when people say, should I sell everything? Should I stay in the market? It's hard to say for sure because when markets do rebound, it may come back fairly quickly in a couple of days, right? This is what happens in these market rallies. So you don't know. So that's why you you have diversification, right? You have some stocks, you have some bonds, you have some cash, et cetera, because you just don't know for sure. However, I don't think it's going to be a slingshot like what people saw in 2020. I just don't think there's any catalyst for that because the Federal Reserve keeps raising interest rates. I mean, you take a look at this. If I were to ask you, okay, do you want to put your money in something that could potentially go 10 to say 30% down, or would you put your money in something that's a guaranteed say 4%? And this essentially is your treasury. People are like, you know what? I'm taking that guaranteed money. I'll take that sweet, sweet guaranteed money, even though inflation's high. Because as it turns out, core inflation may be about 4%. Maybe you get your bonds at like 4.5%, something like that. It's okay. You're not losing, and that's sort of the bet that people are taking because there's a lot of downside risk. And again, I mentioned, like, is Apple really going to come out and say, hey everyone, we're selling more iPhone 14s? They might, but that's the bet that you'd want to take if you believe that. The other thing is too is that I mentioned to you guys several times. I just mentioned again, a couple more times because they're going to change the rate soon on these things. But if you don't have any Series I bonds, it's worth looking into. You can't put all your money in these things. I say that over and over again, but for many people that don't know about these, the main reason is that money managers won't tell you about this stuff because they don't make any money doing that. They make money by managing your money. This is with the government, so I don't make any money talking about these things. I just think it's good advice. And people on YouTube don't talk about this stuff because they've just been pumping you garbage for, penny stocks and crypto and all that kind of stuff. And they don't make any money telling you about this stuff either. So there's no benefit for me to tell you this other than it's good advice. Check out bonds, and Series I bonds are pretty good, 9.62%. You can't put all your money into it, but if you want a savings account and you want to get some sort of return and it's safe, that's where you want to be. Also, too, if you take a look at like how far could we possibly go, this is the S&P PE ratio. So I'm reading it at 18.47. That's what the price of the whole market is, essentially the price of stocks related to how much the companies earn. The mean and the medians, roughly, you can see it right there, is 16 around. So, when this hits, that in that range, 16, then you're starting to think, okay, at least we're at the average of where we were before. It is true, though, we are going into recession, so things could even come down further. But you're not buying at the top if you're interested in stocks, right? You guys can see it right there. So this just gives you some sort of idea of where we are, opposed to some people to say, hey, just buy every day. It's not really the greatest advice. You want to know where you are in the market. Also, too, Schiller PE is around 27. I keep saying mid-20s this, at least it gets interesting, but certainly things could come down further. The difference, this is sort of based on controls for inflation and on the last 10 years, or the other one's just sort of like a raw number. So look at these things for yourself, and this will help you do better in the market and have a general sense of where we are. Also, too, one of the Fed committee members came out and was talking about inflation and such, and her quotes are actually really quite interesting. I'll read her quotes for you guys just so you guys can hear the raw language of what they're saying here. So this is Fed Collins, and she's saying, I like this too, actually, to be honest. Wishful thinking cannot be a substitute for compelling evidence. I like that. Wishful thinking cannot be a substitute for compelling evidence. So before I conclude that inflation has peaked, I will need to see several months of declines in month-over-month readings. And then she goes on to further, quite likely that inflation is near peaking and perhaps may have already peaked. So basically what she's saying, okay, so say the same thing I just told you guys. Maybe inflation has peaked, but you want to see month over month for like a few months, not just 1 month of going down. You want to, see where the trend is actually going. And I just think that's great advice. Wishful thinking can't substitute for evidence, right? That's the reality is they're not going to take their foot off the gas in terms of raising interest rates until they really think that inflation is coming down. And remember, they want 2% inflation, the Fed. And, the last readings we're getting is like 8%. So we're way away from that. And like I said, it may come down to 6 or something like that, but it's not going to just go down to 2 immediately. So this is where I knew that there's like, people who are telling you everything's bullish. I'm like, what are you talking about? Inflation's like way above what they need it to be. Also, too, there's another quote from her. She's saying, I do believe that we can achieve this, but I think it's important to recognize that there are risks on both sides. And she goes on to say, actually, when you're talking about risks on both sides, one of the key things that the Fed always talks about, and I mentioned you guys before on the channel, when you're talking about inflation, it actually hurts people at the bottom of the income scale the most, because when food and fuel and rents go up, I mean, it just eats away at people's income and or buying power, you could say. And the last read that I saw, I haven't looked recently, but it was something like just to pay for your living expenses, basically rent, mortgage, etc., is about 36% of your income, something like that. And a better ratio would be more like 20%. So we're just well above what things should be in terms of cost for people. And so I'm sure you guys know those things. Things are expensive right now. And when things are expensive, people are less likely to buy goods. Also, too, internationally, I just want to show you guys a few international headlines, just so you have a general sense of how the world works. This was interesting to where there was a thing about the deals that China is trying to make with the Taliban in regards to since the U.S. has left. And one of the things I want you to know about China, because we talk a lot about China on the channel, and I know you hear a lot of stuff in the news, but I used to teach at Tsinghua University, which you may not know is a top school in China, and I enjoyed my time in China very, very much. But one of the things I learned very quickly being in China is that part of the culture, and this is not a good thing, is they definitely put money over morals. Like the way the country is because they were poor for so long. When these people finally get money, they don't care about morals whatsoever. And so this is an example of like, it's just business to do business with the Taliban, and we'll sell them whatever stuff, and they'll give us whatever we want, et cetera. And they'll do business with any country the same way that China will do business with Russia. And there's been concerns in the markets of if the U.S. government would sanction China over Russia concerns if Russia were to do escalate the war and use nuclear weapons or something of that nature. So this is just something to point out, sort of like how the world works. Also, too, which we were talking about, remember I was talking about was it Fed Collins was saying that inflation may have peaked. This was the first sort of evidence. Remember, they're looking for evidence that things are coming down in price. Essentially, you guys know how this works in a market. Because when you drive around a city and you're looking for a place to live, and you're like, God, who can pay these rents? Who can buy these houses? And the answer is no one. And so rents start to come down, right? When money starts getting taken out of the system, and people can no longer pay, and when people lose their jobs, rents start to come down. So we're starting to see like rents are starting to come down a bit. So you could see, in terms of positive news, the economy is not going to be horrible forever, and things aren't going to be overpriced forever. But it may take some time. So you can see here, rents are starting to come down a bit. Also, too, going back to the sort of how the world works, etc. There's this crazy story here where India is like sending money through Iran or something to trade with Russia. This is something that I've mentioned to you guys before. So let's see. So it's India and Russia. Sorry, India and China are buying fuel from Russia, and then it was Iran and North Korea are selling weapons to Russia. And, all these different countries are implicated. And kind of for a country like India, they're trying to play a middle ground to where they can still trade with the USA. It's also still trade with Russia. They're trying to play both ways. And one thing that's going on with India right now, there was a headline yesterday to where Apple is moving some iPhone production over there. And basically the strategy is you want to have China plus one or two other countries. And so this creates sort of moral dilemmas when for the USA when India and say China, which are trading partners, are doing business with Russia. And one of the things I want to mention to you guys, I've said several times, is there might be opportunity in Southeast Asia and perhaps Africa in the future for the USA. So we may see some pulling away from China, perhaps. So we'll see if that is indeed the case. But I don't want to think everything is bad. I'm just giving an example here. It's bad for some and good for others. BMW had this really interesting thing that they're saying they're going to be selling more EV cars, and this sort of relates to the whole Tesla bulls and sort of like, remember the wishful thinking is one thing and evidence is another thing. When people that tell you that, companies like Tesla are going to go to the moon and stuff like that makes me remind you that we still have a lot of fervor and irrational exuberance in the markets. And this is just another reminder of there are other companies out there, and there will be competition. And just because some things have been in trend for a while doesn't mean that necessarily be that forever. So BMW is saying, hey, we're going to be selling some EVs. We'll see if that's the case. I like BMWs. I think they're cool cars. And I remember they had like those i3s, those little cute ones, and other things. But we'll see if with their new offerings end up being very good. Also, too, a little bit. So I got to sprinkle in some good news with bad news, right? Also, a little bit of good news. Macau may or may not be opening, and I say may or may not be because they keep changing this stuff. Like it was yesterday, they said, or it was actually 3 or 4 days ago, they said, hey, we're going to open up Hong Kong. Then yesterday it was like, no, we're not going to open Hong Kong. And now we're talking about, hey, we're going to open up Macau. And if you don't know, Macau is south of Hong Kong. It's basically the casino, like Las Vegas area in China. And I think it was like the Wynn stock and some of the casino stocks were going up. But it could be that also, too, they were heavily shorted and then people were covering their shorts. But we'll see if they open up or not. I think it was like, I want to say it was 2 weeks ago that there was a scare of another COVID variant was there. This is something that you're going to see a lot too as market crumbles and stuff like that, you're going to see a lot of these fraud cases come out. This was an interesting one. I remember this was probably 6 months ago. There was this little tiny deli. There's a picture of it there. And I think the stock went up to like, what, $100 million. And like, it was funny. They had like, $100,000 in revenue. It was like a really small revenue, maybe, 50,000 in revenue, but it basically shows that how pump and dumps work. And I remember they sent reporters to this deli and like, okay, so where's $100 million? But it turns out, you do this kind of stuff and they'll get you for fraud. And it's done in New Jersey, which is interesting because there was another one recently too. We saw another story was also in Jersey. It was the one that was like all the pumping Hong Kong and Chinese stocks was out of a place in New Jersey. So I guess, in the past, if you watched that Wolf of Wall Street movie, the corruption was back on essentially Long Island on the east side, and now we're moving to the west side, which is New Jersey. So shout out to the Jersey friends. Love to hear about this pastrami for $100 million. And let's get your opinion on that one. Also, too, in terms of international news, looks like Putin and Russia are going to give Snowden citizenship. So I actually don't know where he is right now. I'm not sure if it says. It's the same with the Do Kwon. These people are like wanted people, but he may be going to Russia, and he may be going to live with Putin for all we know. And it's interesting because I saw this one. I have no idea the validity of this. Right, I see this in the news, but who knows exactly where Putin is? However, there are reports that Putin's hanging out like at this private residence. And I'm sure there's security there. But what's interesting, though, is all the information you can actually find on this thing. So if you're in the mood or in the have the not affiliation, but if you have the affinity to go try and find Putin and remove him from power, he may be in his palace in the forest. And we have pictures of this thing. So this is where Putin might be. This is one of the locales. I don't know exactly. I can't pinpoint it, but this could be a place where he's at. And that's what it looks like. And you can see here that's in the forest. And we have like pictures of the complex and stuff like that. This is from drone footage. So it's interesting, the stuff you can find on the internet. And this would be a floor plan. And if you want to get Putin when he's most vulnerable, he could be in this like swimming pool to stay young. And you can please write in the comments if you think this is legit, this stuff. But this is the floor plan. So I feel like we're doing James Bond level stuff here. Like, where does Putin have his breakfast? Where does he have a lunch? Where does he spend his afternoons, etc.? And if you're looking for Putin and you want to, if you want to sort of get some more rationality and stability in the markets, I suggest we remove Putin from office. And this is where he lives, perhaps. So that's what I'm talking about here. That's Putin right there. And if you guys can figure out where he is in his Fountain of Youth swimming pool, let me know. So that's it. And this is real. This is all stuff. So I don't know if he's there for sure, but this is probably, I'm sure he has more than one place, but this could be a place where he's at. So anyway, I do appreciate everyone watching, and this is your daily Uncut News.